Welcome to the Work Hard, Smile Large podcast, where we explore the outcome of hard work and the power of positivity in our guests' lives. I'm your host and founder, Nicole Christopherson, and today we have the privilege of sitting down with a true master in her field, Angie Wisdom, a master certified coach with a front row seat in the lives of others for over 25 years.
At some point, you realize that, gosh, I really need to understand who I am and have this relationship with myself so that I can lead myself and, kind of close out all that external noise that causes really for you to kind of go off track of what you want.
She's a leader and coach in personal development and business building.
When you're trying to do something and it's not working, you have to have questions that clue you into what's getting in the way.
And she's been instrumental to her clients' success on both their personal and professional lives.
To be side by side with somebody and to help them win at their life and their business is just so huge.
She is the best-selling author of The Non-Negotiable You, the creator of the Morning Mindset Journal.
It was the biggest undertaking I have ever done.
And she's here to share with you everything she does to help others and what makes her so special.
If we're not constantly feeding our mind what we want it to know and understand, then we're at the mercy of everything else it picks up. And it is a magnet to everything around us.
Angie, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me, Nicole. I'm so excited about being on the show.
You are scooting around this year, and that is part of your professional role now. Tell the listeners a little bit about what you've got on the forefront here, and then we'll kind of jump into more on your books and being an author and a podcast host.
Absolutely. Yeah. Scooting around, it seems to be the theme right now. Doing a lot of speaking engagements, and that takes me from, one coast to the other and all over the place. So, recently was in Phoenix and Denver and now headed to Nashville, back here to Orange County for another speaking event, a big Get Intentional event here. But I love it. I was in Tampa not too long ago speaking. Business has just kind of taken me in that direction, which I love, to be in front of a room and impact thousands of people. It's really fun and exciting.
No, I definitely look up to you for that, because last year as I launched the podcast, I was thinking about all these little micro events that we were doing when Work Hard, Smile Large started and the podcast started. And I was like, this is amazing, being able to talk to a guest and share them on such a big platform, around the world, and not have it be a local, hyper local event, and only those guests that were with me be able to experience these extraordinary people. And so from that, I just started thinking, and I was so inspired within myself. I'm like, I would love to share my vision mapping event more. Like, I do this worldwide vision mapping event, but what if I was able to speak to companies and have companies do vision mapping? And so you talking about your leadership and you're taking it farther now and speaking more in different locations and stuff is definitely inspiring for me. It's something that I really hope to grow into from the podcast and for the vision mapping experience that I have, to be able to share it with companies and larger groups of people throughout the year. So thank you for being an inspiration to me always.
Absolutely. And, it'll happen for you, Nicole, because you put something so amazing out there with your vision mapping. And once people start to feel the effects of that and it starts to transform their life and their business and make an impact, that just naturally gets shared. And then it gets shared to the people that are higher up in companies. And then companies will start seeking you out and going, you've got to bring that vision mapping to us. So you are on your way for sure with such an amazing, product. And
I want people to get out of social media and get out of that pressure of who they think they should be, and really tune into who they are. Like, that is what you do every day with your clients and with the audiences that you're able to speak to and touch. And I think we have to touch on that today, really having people be authentic and really having them be their non-negotiable selves, right? On what's important to them and what makes them tick, because it's a full-time job, right? We're not a set it and forget it little piece of this world. We are constantly growing and learning, and being in tune and being authentic to yourself is so much a part of it, part of growing, not competing, not comparing yourself to others, being yourself.
It's everything. And it's a process that we really have to kind of deprogram from a young age to where we are now, because society just kind of puts us in that space where it's like, You compete, you strive to meet somebody else's expectations. Your worth is tied to everybody else. You constantly get external validation and input on what you should be doing. So it's naturally that we kind of grow up that way with the way society's set up. But at some point you realize that, gosh, I really need to understand who I am and have this relationship with myself so that I can lead myself and, kind of close out all that external noise that causes, really for you to kind of go off track of what you want. So it's a process that is so necessary and truly does lead to everything that you want in your life.
And sometimes it happens organically and people just go, wow, I'm so happy. I just feel so good being myself and everything's gotten so much better and it makes more sense. And sometimes it's a lot of work for people, right? And I'm not talking in the rebellious stage for our listeners, like where people just go, I'm just going to be myself. And they go out and they're just like destructive and crazy and don't really know what direction they're in. I'm saying when you really fall into your true purpose for yourself and what makes you feel good and what you are able to give to others and really truly understanding what that core power is, that energy within you.
Yeah, your authentic self is your very best opportunity to share your gifts to the world and to make the biggest impact, which comes back in, tenfold to success and joy in yourself.
Yeah. And being able to accomplish things and not be on that hamster wheel of doing the same thing every day over and over and over again and getting bored and confused and all those kinds of things. Let's talk about where you started in your career, because you are coaching people regularly. You have been for a couple decades. We talked the other day, we were talking about my kids' ages, and you're like, oh my gosh, that was about the time I got freed from being the mom and I felt like I started growing my business and now here you are. So let's talk about when you started. Like, how did you just know you wanted to be a coach and how did you transition to that from your career?
It's funny. I didn't really know I wanted to be a coach. Oddly enough, when I was in high school, I wanted to be a psychology major, and I didn't go that way. I went towards nursing and decided that wasn't for me. Ended up in the financial industry. So I worked for Morgan Stanley. Dean Witter back then was what it was called. And I quickly realized I was really great at developing business and making relationships. And I wanted to help other brokers do that. So I moved into management and became, a leader from that perspective, helping people craft their business, their goals. So kind of in that coaching role, in addition to sitting down and helping people with their own financial planning as well. Well, I moved over to a company with my husband and realized this is really what I love to do, the coaching aspect. We started our own investment firm back in 2003. So my job was really to bring in agents, brokers, help them, coach them into success so that we had multiple, 7-figure brokers at our company. And that was really when I found my passion for it. But I stayed within like certain financial companies. And it wasn't until, like you said, when my kids got a little bit older and I was like, okay, I don't have to be the mom driving around. I don't have to be at school all the time. That it allowed me to really put, my wings out and say, I'm going full speed ahead on this. And overnight, it was just like, spread like rapid fire. And it's been an exciting journey because it's just evolved from the one-on-one clients that I've helped to kind of booking out too much there and opening up groups and then going, okay, I need to do something beyond that. And then writing the book for people and the journal. And now speaking. It's just been this amazing, trajectory that I've been blessed to be on, to start helping one person and then 10 and then 20, then 50, then, so on and so forth.
And that's because we're all part of a community. And I know how I got to meet you because I was watching a friend of mine appear in my industry. And I just said, gosh, you have done, like you were doing it. I remember when you had that fear in you. You didn't know if you wanted to get back into the business and start selling real estate again. And you were kind of frozen in your spot. And I'm just watching you grow and bloom. Like, how are you doing this? Like, let's sit down. I really just wanted my friend to tell me where her strength was coming from and, how she got in there. And we sat down and she's like, I had this amazing coach. Her name's Angie Wisdom. And she's like, isn't her name a total, like, don't you love her name? Doesn't it just make you want to talk to her? And I remember us just sitting and talking. I'm like, that makes sense. And yes, I have to meet Angie, right? Like, and then from there, she was one person in my real estate industry in our hyper local area. And then I noticed other people kind of growing their brands and doing stuff. And then sure enough, you pop up in their social media feed. I'm like, oh, Angie touched him.
There's another one.
And
yeah,
it's
so
literally
amazing.
been the last like 5 years that, I watch other peers in my industry that you're able to help them grow their teams, grow their brands, grow their business. And it's beautiful watching it.
Yeah.
And no one's competitive. Obviously, we all know you're working with different, I'm calling us peers. I don't like to call anybody competition anymore at all, because we all have our own way and people to do business with. But yeah, we've seen it firsthand. So congratulations on that. And now,
thank you.
I know. And that's just like, you've personally had such an impact on Orange County real estate and these professionals that want to help their clients single-handedly.
Like I said, been blessed. It's just, I pinch myself every day that I get to be alongside of people and go on this journey with them. And I get to like celebrate success with everybody all the time. I mean, definitely challenges too, but I'm like, I got to tell you, I love to win. I mean, I am a competitor at heart. I go on game shows. I'll try anything. And so to be,
we'll circle back on that one.
We'll come back to that. But so it's like to be side by side with somebody and to help them win at their life and their business is just so huge. And I have to comment on, you said something that's so important where you said, there's no competition. And it is so true. Like when you get to this space, and I coach a lot of people in the same county that we won't call them competition, but are in the same industry. And yes, they, might both go on the same listing presentation for a client, but they don't view themselves as competition once they kind of come through coaching, because they realize that when they are authentic, when they understand what their true gifts are, they aren't competing against anybody else. So they're willing to share me and share the information because they're like, I've got my own thing going on. And what you do isn't going to influence that. So it's just something that I had to mention because it really is special when you get to that place within yourself that you're not worried about competition. You are so good with who you are. And if someone isn't right for you, that's okay too. But that's a great place to stand in.
But I think we also, through determining that about ourselves, look at our industry and our profession, and we're not salespeople anymore. We're community builders, and we are part of families' decisions and these big investments in their lives. And I think we also view our career differently, you know what I mean, than what it's traditionally been stereotyped as, right?
For sure.
It's not a one turn and burn client like selling a car. We're building relationships in our communities more than we ever have,
It's true.
Repeating
it's
the process.
Fun to see.
So true. Now that we've got our listeners really tuned into you and the impact you've had locally in Orange County and stuff, I have to ask you, when you became an author and you determined to yourself and you put it on your goals that you were going to write a book, how did you fit that into your coaching? How did you fit that into your life? Because it's very unique. And I have a friend who's also writing a book right now, and she sits down with another author and they sit and write together at a coffee shop. I think everybody has a unique way to build that in because it's not an overnight process. So will you share that with us for our listeners?
Absolutely. It was the biggest undertaking I have ever done. The close second is this event coming up in March. I've decided, but
the marketing's been great for it. It's caught my eye, and it's been a lot of marketing and a lot of build up to it, which is a lot of work. I know that.
It is. It's a shorter term work though than the book. But yeah, the book, it's like, I have to tell you, I originally wrote this book or set out to write it because I found myself constantly saying, I'm not a writer. I'm a horrible writer. I could never write. And it was like, once I caught those thoughts, I was like, oh God, now I've got to write a book. You know what I mean? I've got to go in direct conflict with where the resistance is. So I set out to write it, one, obviously to impact other people, but it was also such a challenge for me. I knew that I held so much information inside that it impacted thousands and thousands of lives. It felt like my responsibility to get it out there. So when I started it, it was a struggle. I had a book coach, I had an amazing book coach, Kim O'Hara, but we met every single week and I would have a certain amount to do. I would have to write a chapter and then we would sit and we would go through it and she would up level, like challenge me on words, challenge me on my stories, all of that. But it was so hard. Like the first round, I was frantically like trying to get it in at the last minute. And quite frankly, I was producing really crappy work. And so it was a struggle. You do 3 drafts, but it was such a struggle to find that rhythm. And I finally had to say to myself, like, I have to give certain things up in my life right now, temporarily in this season, in order to do this thing that is so important to me. So I had to cut back, certain workouts. I had to cut back some of the family time. It was major sacrifices that my family made for me, that I made as far as my fitness. Doesn't mean I cut it out, but I literally had to say, where is this going? And I found that writing first thing in the morning at like 3:30 in the morning in the dark was my very, very best writing time. So that became when I would write every single morning, and I would have a chapter due at the end of the week.
I relate to that. It happens to me in the evening when I write a lot of my thoughts down. I'm not writing a book for everybody that's listening. I'm not writing a book right now. But I do, you have to, I was wondering, because you have to have these like aha moments where you're creative and you need to get the thoughts out. And I wasn't sure if it was like, oh, I just let it flow over a couple years. You actually had yourself structured every single week.
I did. And here's something important for listeners to understand in anything you're trying to do, is that when you're trying to do something and it's not working, you have to have questions that clue you into what's getting in the way. It prevents you from banging your head up against the wall and failing again and again and again. So the Morning Mindset Journal that we've talked many times about, it has a question. Did you accomplish your intentions? What got in the way? What did you learn? Those 3 questions constantly had me pivoting until I found the perfect zone. So for example, if I set an intention to write, I'm going to write for an hour today, and I would schedule it between clients and then I wouldn't get it done, I would say, okay, what got in the way? Well, I was too busy between clients. What did I learn? I cannot write during the day during clients. So I did that every single day, and I found out something new about myself until I finally got myself to the point where I was like, this is where it works. But if you don't ask yourself those reflective questions, you will never find out your magic sauce and where your best, use of time is.
True. So when you set out to write a book and you knew you were going to accomplish this to combat your thought process, did you have to put a goal, like end date on it and get it done within a certain amount of time? Did you put that pressure on yourself, or was there not a determined end date? Because that's also something that like flows in my mind. Like, do you have to set that end, or do you just let it organically flow until you feel like you got to the finish and you have enough content?
I'm a big believer in setting that end goal. Now, again, going back to the fact that I had a book coach, she's like structured. So she's like, we do this many weeks for your first draft, your second draft, your third draft. So I had to keep up because if you were going to drag that, if you were going to drag that out, guess what? You were paying a lot more money. So I had that on the end. And it's also just great accountability. And no doubt, had I not had that structure and a book coach, I would have dragged it out. I would have procrastinated. I would have gone through doubt. But I wrote through all of that because, I had the support, fortunately. But if you don't have an end date that you're shooting for.
I know date is very important, but sometimes a book, you know what I mean? If you get stuck, like, you know what I mean? There's just certain things that my perception tells me like might not be easy to work within a time frame for writing a book when it's just something you have to get out of you. But I get that you need that end goal to meet it, and you have a professional assisting you.
Yeah. And I would say, as long as you have progress, I know some people, great authors, great books, and they're like, this took me 5 years to write. But they also talk about how they were constantly in the process and gathering data. And I think that's different than just kind of like tapping out and getting busy and not feeling creative. That's a different place.
Yeah, exactly. So The Non-Negotiable You is your newest book, your best-selling book. And this is the book we're all kind of talking about, correct? This is the one.
Yes.
Is available where for our listeners?
You can get on Amazon. You can get on my website. But Amazon Prime, I mean, I feel like everyone's Amazon Prime these days. So there you go. And in 24 hours, it'll be on your doorstep.
Yeah. Congratulations on that. It's definitely something that I have, since my other friend Tiffany was talking to me about her writing a book, I'm like, maybe I'll do that one day. Like, and so it's something that kind of just so you can share your thoughts and what you've done and conversations you've had with other people and the way you've impacted other lives and sharing how you've grown. It's really like something special, even if it's just for my children, So I have to figure out my purpose for that before it ever comes to fruition. But yeah, it's there. So
everybody
coaching,
has a story.
I met with you in my home. We were in the pandemic, and you would come to my home and meet with me there, which was a beautiful house. I miss it.
Yes.
And then you got your own office right around the corner. And so I met with you there at your office. And now you're kind of like on the road and speaking and stuff like that. So talk to me about when the podcast came about, because I know you weren't going to be podcasting in people's homes and stuff like that. So let's talk about that part of your journey too, because I just want everybody to just know that it's a journey and everybody kind of takes it in their own stride.
Yeah, it really is. But I also believe that God puts things in front of our face at certain times, the funniest little things that motivate you and get you back focused to things. And I always kind of thought having a podcast would be really, really fun. I'm a coach. I love asking questions. So interviewing people is so fun. And I've just always kind of wanted to do that. And the timing with the release of the book was a great way to do that. I wanted to talk to people about what was non-negotiable in their life and bring, again, their wisdom to a different audience. I mean, look, some people are on social media on Instagram, some are on TikTok, some are on LinkedIn, some aren't on anything and they just listen to podcasts, some just read. So I really had this mentality of like, if I want to impact millions of people, how do I continue to do it in a different form of media? So that's where the podcast came into play. And then it was on the back of my mind. And I'll tell you the funniest thing. I have a couple who is in real estate in LA, and their mother doesn't speak a whole lot of English, but she watches my reels. And they said, Mama Juan said you should start a podcast because that's how she would like to learn more English. And I was like, I'm doing it. We're doing And so it was this funny thing, like it was already planted, but I just needed one more reason to do it. And I was like, I'm on. So it's been really fun. We've done some of the episodes out of my house. We've done some in the studio, and a lot of them are obviously online because I'm talking to people all over the place. But it's so fun.
It is so fun, and it fuels me. And I started, and I'm like, you know what? I'm going to do the podcast. It's going to be so easy. I'll record a couple episodes and I'll batch record. I'll get ahead, and it'll just be so easy to fit in with my real estate career in 2 states, and now I can't not be involved in Work Hard, Smile Large because it's so part of my life, and it's not a set it and forget it and you're ahead of schedule on it or anything like that, because you're constantly meeting people. And it gets me kind of emotional, but it happened this year. I was with my daughter at the grocery store, which I rarely take my kids to the grocery store. I do drive-up orders. I'm very efficient on food. I don't comb aisles and buy extra stuff. And I'm in the grocery store with her, and it's in the evening, and we're grabbing a few things to make a cake for my husband for his birthday. So it's between Christmas and New Year's. I'm walking down an aisle, and somebody's like, stops me. And they're like, hey, you're the podcast host. And my daughter looks at me and she's like, oh. And I'm like in the bread aisle. And I'm like, you're Laura, right? I go, yes, Work Hard, Smile Large. And she's like, oh my God, I get to meet you in person finally. And I just was like, I had this moment where I was standing there and I'm looking at my youngest daughter and I'm looking at Laura and I'm like, you're a podcast host too. And we sat in the bread aisle for like 25 minutes talking. And I'm like, Liv, will you capture this? And I wanted Liv to capture it because of what it meant to her. Because they view us, you know what I mean? I do a lot of work. I do these things and they're involved in it, but they view it as like, you don't have enough followers. Their perception of reach and community is so different than ours. And she was like, oh my gosh, Mom, people know who you are in public now. I was like, isn't that pretty cool? But it was the connection with my daughter that I needed to capture that moment, because I'm like, here it is, and it makes it all worth it, because my PR company's like, hey, do you need help getting guests on the podcast? And I finally just said, you don't need to ask me that anymore, because somebody's on, or we're constantly talking to people. And that was my biggest fear going into it. Am I going to be able to get enough podcast guests? Like, how am I going to find guests and stuff like that? And it happens naturally. And you answer all these questions about it when you start it, right? Like
sure.
You have to take that first step, right? To keep kind of like understand what it really is going to be like. But it's been a great journey. It's been a great experience for me. My husband's like, I think you should just do the podcast. And I'm like, where is all this going? Like, this is, you guys are all so supportive, you know? It's so fun. So I can't say there's really been anything negative that's come out of it. Like, it's been a great experience.
When you can even hear the way you light up about it, you know? So why everyone's so supportive, right? Because they want to see you shine. They want to see you so happy. And clearly it makes you that happy. And I love that your daughter got to witness that, because we are truly, you know, role models. And even if they don't necessarily say it, they're watching and they're learning from everything that we do. So what a beautiful moment that she got to witness that.
Yeah, it was one of those things. And I just like went back into the car and got home, and she like ran into the house to tell my husband, like, Mom, somebody knew Mom in the grocery store as the Work Hard Smile Large podcast lady.
I love it. That was so good.
Yeah.
Little confirmations.
I'll take that with me. So I got all my questions out except for one, because I know you like asking questions, but this is the one thing that's so important for me and my takeaway from the podcast. What's a life mantra or a motto that you use or live by?
I have a couple different mantras depending on the area of my life. I'm really big about creating mantras that embrace what I will do, why I will do it, how it will impact my life. And it could be in different ways. So like from a health mantra, you know, I will show up for myself physically and mentally every single day, because it's going to create joy and fulfillment and give me a long lasting life. So like that's a mantra I embrace from the health perspective. From a work perspective, you know, I will show up and give unconditionally to make a difference in the world, because it gives me a fulfilling, financially free and time-free life. So, you know, I have different mantras for different pieces of my life, but they're so important because, again, our brains are wired from years ago, from childhood experiences, from even things that happened just last year. So if we're not constantly feeding our mind what we want it to know and understand, then we're at the mercy of everything else it picks up.
100%.
And it is a magnet to 100%. Everything around us.
100%. And that's something that Matt and I talked a lot about last year, because as I run my teams, you know, and manage my teams and mentor people in the real estate industry, and then I went to, you know, grow Work Hard Smile Large with my daughters, I find that I like to go and do a lot of things. And he was always like, God, you say yes to everything. Like, you're always going out. Our calendar's so busy all the time. And it wasn't until I was like, try it with me. Try this with me and see how it feels. Like, try it on. Don't say no. I got the babysitter arranged. I'm obviously going to I'll have everything arranged for us. Just try it for a while and do it in your business, babe. Like, your team wants you to fly back to California, or they want you to do stuff, and you always kind of find a reason because you're on the road, you know, more than we ever were, or he was ever in his career. So just say yes to all of it. See how much you can go and do and work out, and obviously take care of yourself. And our motto and our new hashtag last year was yes is life. He was like, this is amazing. Like, it redefined his role in his company because he said yes to more. And it started off that like it was yes to more socially, but he didn't realize socially was feeding his soul professionally. And I'm not talking about going out and dancing and doing crazy stuff like that. I'm saying like going and meeting new people at a dinner, or going to, you know what I mean? Some sort of smaller event. And his perception changed on that. And I think it really impacted his role in his company in 2023. And now we're in 2024, and we've got these like new sayings, and his new saying, because that came out of that, the evolution of it. And I'm sharing this because I think your mantras evolve too, like you said.
Absolutely.
The new one is, why not me? Because being in an executive level, you talk, and being a manager, being a mentor, being a coach, sometimes you self-talk yourself out of, you know what I mean? What else your role can give you, or what you can get out of something, or what the outcome can be. Not that you don't have defined goals. And so now he's just like, why not me? Like, why not now? Why not us? That's his leadership style this year. Why not us? Why not now?
Yeah.
because historically it took 3 years for that trajectory in my profession, or why not me? Why not now? And so it gives them this other strength and timing, right? Based on their course of action. I don't know. It's been really interesting because work hard, smile large is like, it's in our blood. Like we say it every day. That's just natural. But I wanted our listeners to hear like our micro mantras right now, and that have really helped, and for different reasons.
Yeah, it's so helpful to have. I call them pocket responses, because every day your mind thinks thousands of thoughts, and most of them negative. And so to have these pocket responses of, why not me? I am capable. I am deserving. Whatever it may be available for you to talk back to that thought is everything. It's the difference of whether you're in the driver's seat or your mind is in the driver's seat. So those are so key.
Yeah. And sharing it, not being afraid to share it with others because you're afraid of criticism. I think that's been a really good tool or realization, because it gives the other person the confidence to talk about it or think about it that way. And so not relying on technology to show us everything all the time, but really having authentic conversations about these things too. I really want people to be comfortable talking to people about it too, because I think that's been really helpful for him as a person in his profession. Because no matter where you are, what your position is, if you own the company or you're just joining the industry, you all have something else you want to achieve or you want to grow into, or a vision of where you can be or could be or whatnot. So just because you're at the top or you own that doesn't mean there's not more for you too, right?
Always growing.
Yep. Always growing.
Yeah.
Always growing.
No matter what, you should have that vision. What I like to think of it as like, what seat are you moving into? You're always moving into a new seat. Otherwise you stay stagnant. So you have to constantly know, like, what does that look like and how are you living into it?
I had a question for you about books that you read, because when you were saying I really like to ask questions, a friend of mine, Renee Funk, she lives in Florida. She is a close friend of Phil Jones and the Exactly What to Say books, which is obviously about communication and stuff like that. It made me think, like, what books do inspire you, or what are your favorite books? And are you familiar with Phil Jones in that? Because knowing how to converse with people and ask questions is an art in a lot of ways, right? Because you really have to, it's a psychology thing, I'm sure, too, and it goes back to your education. But I just wanted to jump into that really quick so our listeners could hear, because you're a wealth of knowledge, and I know it comes from some favorite books and people, be it authors and stuff like that. So if you could share.
Curiosity is one of the biggest superpowers you can have. And good questions come from being genuinely curious. Most people are not curious because the ego is driving and they are knowing. So you can't be knowing and curious. So you really have to let go of like what you know, let go of the agenda, let go of what you want to say, and just be, sometimes I say, be nosy. And great questions come from that. If I listen to you, really, really listen to you presently, and don't listen to give an answer, don't listen to respond, but listen, I'm going to have a very curious, interesting question that's going to create a lot of clarity. And that's the difference between great questions and just kind of mediocre questions. So, as far as books that brought that out, that goes deep from my coaching. I mean, that's probably the number one skill set you learn when you go through true coaching certification and get to this master coaching level that I'm at, is how do you listen for the right words to ask the right questions? So I'll tell my clients all the time, because you need it in any profession. If you listen to what somebody says, just get nosy about something like the last thing they say. So somebody will be like, oh, how was your weekend? It was great. And most people go, oh, and they cap it. What was great about it? Oh, I played golf. Oh, what was great in your golf game? I made this really great putt from, 40 feet out. Wow. What made you make that putt? Well, I got this new putter. And it just leads, you know what I mean, to like one question to the next. But we're usually just not in the present moment. We're usually not interested or curious enough. And that's what prevents the great questions. So I know that wasn't the answer you're looking for from a book perspective, but just be curious. I do have favorite books though, but I can't really, I'm sitting here thinking, going, do any of them talk to me about questions? Not really. The Coaching Habit is a really great book for leaders that are wanting to understand how to ask great questions. Other favorite books of mine, though, that have been life-changing, Stephen Covey, 7 Habits of Highly Successful People, all-time, hands down, favorite book. Eckhart Tolle, The Power of Now, that encompasses being present enough to listen well so you can ask the questions.
I would say that's the biggest skill that I have learned in the last 3, 4, 5 years of my life. Kind of since I was introduced to you or about that time. So much change was happening and I felt like I was reactive to everything. And very, very fast paced. It was a lot of what my lifestyle was like before I moved to Texas and just made a lot of transitions in a really short period of time in my life. But I was like, I hate that feeling of like always being busy and not being there to sit and listen to a conversation and like just that rushed feeling. And I'm late to a lot of things, not professionally, but like I give the floor, I open the floor when there's a conversation happening or something's happening. I'm like, I really now it's natural and just tuned into it and what that person's saying. Whereas before I was always like thinking about something else. And it's so funny saying that to you. I'm like, it's like my Orange County lifestyle was just so like
fast,
tense all the time. Fast.
Yeah.
And it's not that I accomplished less. It's just a different feeling inside. And I had to let that go because I couldn't process what was happening in my personal life and with my family and their emotions and have that feeling in every little thing. I needed to sit and hear what my kids were saying. Like I needed to hear my agents and what they were saying, like because it was what was going on and changing was impacting everybody around me too. And I was like, I just have to be here for everybody and listen.
It's so, Orange County, it's like, it's fast. You are a product of your environment unless you really consciously choose to do something different. So if you're in a fast-paced environment, you're going to tend to move faster. If you go to a more laid-back environment, you're likely going to fall into that pattern as well. So that's just kind of part of it. But being present, it increases our results. It increases our fulfillment. It's one of the best things that you can do to change your life.
You're not thinking in your head about your own stuff. It's not me. You're very, I don't know, your awareness is just so much more open. And you said it too.
Senses are like hyper-focused.
Yeah. I love looking at people's eyes when they're talking and like seeing their facial expressions. And that's what really helps me like tune into them. I think that's my new superpower. I just am like, instead of staring off around them and looking around and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. And the majority of language is translated through body language, not words. So, that's another great thing about asking questions is reading people's body language.
She gave us a secret. Did everybody hear that? She's giving us a secret.
That it really is. I'll sit in here with a client and they won't say anything. And I'll go, what's going on with you? And they're like, what do you mean? I'm like, why are you a little, why are you moving around so much? Or what was that big sigh for? Well, what made you roll your eyes? And they're like, oh gosh. And they don't even know until you ask that question. But body language is a huge piece of it.
Agree. Well, I have taken up your time, but I've never talked to you so authentically. We have a lot of conversations and you're a big supporter and you've always been so supportive of every decision I made. That's one thing that I just want to say. I needed to give you compliments today because of our journey together. And thank you for always supporting me. She's an amazing person for everybody that's listening. But you think about a coach that kind of redirects you or tells you you're doing things wrong, or maybe you need to do things different and stuff like that. And I have to share that with you. Like you've always just been a good supporter and we're re-engaging our coaching. So I'm really excited about that too.
I'm excited too. And look, you have a great relationship with yourself and you trust yourself. So a coach should be able to support that and look at the path that you've created for yourself. It's just been amazing to watch you over the last few years. And there's always, uncertainty. And I remember coming to your house one day and you're like, well, we're moving, we're selling the house. And I was like, okay, here we go. And that's just how life happens sometimes. And if you trust yourself and you know yourself enough, you can guide yourself right through it and get to where you want to go. So
it's 100% that. And the Work Hard, Smile Large and the podcast has been a big platform for me to talk about that for people in the world that have to accept change, right? And it's kind of what you make of that change and the perception you put on that change. Like, I was panicked at first. I had a brand new house that I just moved into within the last year and a half. And I had a family member, my best friend, telling me we had to go. He wasn't happy there anymore, you know? And when I looked at it through that lens, and I said, doesn't matter if we're here and he's unhappy, this is our adventure. And we can always come back. And we sat together and we talked through that because I was freaked out. I've moved a lot in the world. I've been an adventurer. He's like, bring that hippie side out of you, Nicole. Like, remember when you were in college and like post-college, you were like a hippie. He's like, you went everywhere. You lived in another country. And he said, do that with me. This is our family's adventure. And that's where it clicked, through that communication chain of understanding, like, staying in the same place was not going to work for us. And we were a unit, right? And so it's just opened up so much in our lives. And I want people to know that, not to be paralyzed by change or crippled by that. Really understand and look at it positively. And there's hard times. It's always going to, like, you know what I mean? There's always speed bumps and, you know, challenges and stuff. But we approached it for the right reasons. So I could have kicked and screamed and been like, I'm staying here and I'm running my real estate company and my brokerage, and you know, like, I'm not willing to make that change, and you can fly back and forth, but that was selfish. So, and that's the one thing that I am not.
Well, it's all worked out.
Yeah, it's all worked out, and you've been there to witness it along the way. And I wanted to just give you a compliment as we closed out this podcast episode today, because you're such a strong person and you share that strength with everybody, and you bring that strength out of everyone as well. So thank you so much for continuing to grow and give in all these different facets with your book and the podcast. If you have not listened to Angie's podcast, where can they find you? I'm sure on all streaming platforms.
All streaming platforms, Sharing Wisdom.
Sharing Wisdom.
I think there's actually a couple Sharing Wisdoms, actually. So look for Angie Wisdom and you'll find me. It's out there. It's also on my website, angiewisdom.com. It's always posted on social media at Angie Wisdom Life Coach. So it's an easy name to find. Wisdom.
And we'll have it all here in the description, and we'll have all her information on this episode. So make sure to listen to Sharing Wisdom with Angie Wisdom, and follow her on social media as well. She's always giving a lot of little tips and fun little videos. She's very active, so you can stay connected with her there. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to be with me today and our listeners on the Work Hard, Smile Large podcast. As always, on our podcast episodes, we close out with work hard,
smile large.
All right. Thank you, Angie. And that wraps up another incredible episode of the Work Hard, Smile Large podcast. I hope you enjoyed our journey today as much as I did. A big thank you to our amazing guest for sharing her story and insights. If you found inspiration in today's episode, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with friends, family, or anyone who could use a boost. Remember, your journey is unique and every step counts. Keep working hard and never forget to smile large. If you haven't already, make sure to subscribe. You never want to miss an episode. We have a lot more incredible stories and conversations lined up for this season. Until next time, keep pushing forward, keep dreaming big, and as always, work hard, smile large.